I'm David, a contract employee at a confectionery manufacturer. I joined this company right after graduating from high school. When I started, I worked in logistics at a factory near the headquarters, but now I'm handling orders and purchases at the main office. I prefer this clerical work over physical labor. It's been 10 years since I joined, and I think I've gotten quite used to the job. Recently, Hannah started getting involved in the business. She's 4 years younger than me and is referred to as the boss daughter behind her back rather than by her real name. Frankly, she's not good at her job. She's slow and even slacks off. However, Mr. Johnson, the boss, is lenient with his daughter and doesn't reprimand her despite seeing this. My colleagues are also fed up with her. Man, Hannah was just on her cell phone all day today, just texting and slacking off. Due to her status, the other employees couldn't say anything to her. One day, during such a routine, following an organizational change, there was a seat rearrangement, and Hannah started working next to me. Mr. Johnson told me, if my daughter has any trouble, please help her out. Since then, I've been taking care of my own work and looking after her as well. She's always on her cell phone during work and sometimes leaves her tasks midway to take a break. Watching this every day was frustrating for me. Hey, could you check these documents too? She glanced at me briefly from her cell phone and said, I'll do it later, before returning her gaze to her cell phone. In the end, she left saying she'd check the documents tomorrow and went home on time. Every day was like this. Because of her, I often had to work overtime. Seriously, I should have just done it myself from the beginning. I grumbled to myself in the empty office. The future looked bleak. A few weeks later, my anger finally erupted. While I was teaching her, she kept glancing at her cell phone, so I blurted out, "Don't take your job so lightly." She paused for a moment with an annoyed look, but I continued, "If you're going to work half-heartedly, it might be better if you quit. To be honest, you're a hindrance right now." "What's with that attitude?" she retorted, her eyes red, and she stormed off. Watching her leave, I immediately regretted speaking so harshly. The next day, she came to work with swollen eyes. She had obviously cried. It was my fault. As I was about to apologize, she said, "I'm sorry." I hadn't expected that. Seeing her like that, I felt bad for being harsh with my words. "I'm sorry for being too harsh. Let's both do our best starting today," I said, and Hannah smiled brightly. From that day on, she seemed like a changed person, engaging in her work and actively progressing tasks. "I'll do that," she offered. "We need to make quite a lot of copies, though." "That's fine. I'll do it." She willingly took on even the tedious tasks. Of course, there was no longer a cell phone on her desk. My colleagues were also surprised by her transformation. It was some time later when I overheard a rumor. I heard that Hannah was going to marry the son of a business partner. I thought, oh, is that so, but didn't pay much attention to it. After a while, Hannah rarely showed up at work. I assumed she was busy with wedding preparations or something, as she had applied for leave, so I just focused on my own tasks without much concern. But then, the problem happened suddenly. While I was working at my desk, Mr. Johnson tapped me on the shoulder. "Can you come to my office right away?" Yes, okay." I wondered what Mr. Johnson himself wanted to talk about. His face was expressionless. I had a bad feeling. I hurried to Mr. Johnson's office, sweating nervously, and knocked on the door. "Come in." As I slowly opened the door, there sat Mr. Johnson with a stern face. Stunned, I heard Mr. Johnson say, "You really harassed my daughter, didn't you?" I was confused. "I'm sorry, but what are you talking about?" According to Mr. Johnson, I had made her suddenly do a large amount of copying during work as a form of harassment. He said that because of this, she recently became afraid to come to the company and couldn't show her face. It seemed Hannah had taken my scolding more seriously than I thought. So that's what it was. I felt betrayed. The copying was a task she volunteered for herself. I didn't request it to her. I tried to explain the truth to Mr. Johnson, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, I was demoted to a factory in the countryside. Angry and misunderstood, I thought about quitting the job, but with no special skills and unsure about finding another job quickly, I ended up heading to the new location 2 weeks later. At the new factory I was transferred to, I ended up being assigned a wide range of tasks, from production work to administrative duties. It's significantly harder than when I was at the headquarters. However, there was a silver lining. The factory had many older women who were all friendly and made the job much easier. In particular, I got along well with Mary, a lady in her 50s who worked part-time. Mary appeared to be quite a veteran part-time employee, very knowledgeable about the company. She seemed to be aware of not only the factory's workings but also those of the headquarters. Tired, hut here, this is juice I made from oranges grown in my garden, and I also made some cheesecakes. Please have some. Mary always brought me drinks and snacks when I was working overtime. Well, that looks delicious. I'd like some too. Other part-timers, hungry from overtime, also gathered around. Not to be rude, but Mary was like a mother to everyone. Her calm and kind demeanor made her popular among other employees, and she even advised the younger temps on life matters. "Mary, I'm thinking about getting married. Can we talk for a bit?" Of course. So, who is she? Thanks to her, the factory had a very homely atmosphere. I was living a fulfilling, though challenging, life. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. Hannah, of all people, came to the factory. As soon as she saw me, she apologized, saying, "I'm really sorry." Her sudden appearance and immediate apology left everyone around us in a daze. It seemed like the factory workers didn't know she was Hannah. Confused, I just stared at her. Then Mary appeared behind me. Seeing Hannah, Mary seemed surprised and whispered, "Lucy." Then, like a mother, she stroked her head and said, "You've grown up so much." Had she worked at this factory before? Then, somewhat shyly, Hannah said, "It's been a long time, Mom." I was stunned, hearing that word. The employees around us were also shocked by her calling Mary Mom. We decided to talk in a separate room. Hannah, with tears in her eyes, kept apologizing, saying, "I'm really, really sorry for the trouble I caused." Then Mary asked her, "What's going on? What happened?" Hannah began to explain bit by bit. She didn't hold a grudge for being scolded by me. In fact, she was grateful for the strict guidance. I had a sick rabbit at home, so I installed a camera in my room to watch it constantly. I was so worried that I kept looking at it even at work, and if anything seemed wrong, I'd immediately text the vet. That's why I couldn't focus on work. After being scolded, I realized I couldn't keep this up while everyone else was working hard, so I left my rabbit with the vet. That's what it was all about. Finally, I understood why she was always looking at her cell phone. Then, I told my dad that being scolded at work was a wake-up call for me, but somehow he misunderstood and thought I was harassed by being made to do lots of copying. Once he gets something in his head, he won't listen to anyone. And she came to apologize because she was shocked to find out I had been transferred to the factory after she took a leave to care for her rabbit's surgery. That's when Mary spoke up as if she had realized something. "I see. It looks like I'll have to talk to him myself," she murmured. It turned out, Mary and Mr. Johnson were once married. However, they had divorced about 10 years ago. Mary originally worked at the headquarters but moved to this factory after their divorce. Mary quickly contacted Mr. Johnson, and the next day he showed up at the factory. Looking awkward, he greeted Mary with a "long time, No, see. Mary retorted, "You told me to leave the company and our daughter to you, but was it a mistake to trust you?" Mr. Johnson visibly shrank. It was my first time seeing him like this. Watching him, Mary said with exasperation, "You're still so stubborn and set in your ways." I then learned another shocking fact. Our company was originally managed by Mary as an executive. I joined after she had left her position, so I had no idea. Mary sighed, "You don't listen to your daughter or your employees. You can't run a company like that. You've always been like this, not listening to others." Mr. Johnson muttered, "Quiet down," unable to argue back. Finally, Mary asked, "If you plan to keep doing as you please, should I take over the company and Lucy, what will you do?" Mr. Johnson tearfully pleaded, "No, I'll do it." Hannah, who had been silent until then, took her father's hand and said, "Dad, I know you care about me. You were always kind and bought me everything. Of course, I love you, but..." Then she looked down, blushing slightly, and said, "I just want to marry someone I love," looking into Mr. Johnson's eyes and then, for some reason, glancing at me. Mary again stroked her head. Mr. Johnson looked down and murmured, "Understood." The discussion concluded for the time being, and the next day, work at the factory resumed. I thought I would continue working at the factory, but a week later, I was ordered to return to the headquarters. It was quite sudden and busy, but I was happy to return, as I preferred working at the headquarters. Right after returning, she invited me to a coffee shop during lunch break. As soon as we sat down, she said, "I'm truly sorry for what happened." To her, I said, "You don't have to apologize so many times. Let's look forward to working together again." She insisted on treating me as an apology and paid the bill. As I thanked her and began to walk away, I said, "Thank you for the meal." That's when she pulled my hand and said, "Wait." Confused, I stopped, and she blushed, saying, I like you. I have feelings for you," while looking down. On what? I was flustered by her sudden confession, to which she continued, "I have a request. Would you go out with me? I refused the marriage because I fell for you. Is that okay?" pleading earnestly. Honestly, at that time, I didn't have romantic feelings for her, so we decided to start as friends. However, it didn't take long for us to grow close, and I quickly became attracted to her childlike charm and innocence. Soon, I confessed my feelings, and we started dating. About a month after dating Lucy, I was called to Mr. Johnson's office again. As I entered, he said, "I hear you're dating my daughter," and I nervously wondered what I would be reprimanded for this time. Mr. Johnson said, "I want you to work harder because I'm entrusting my daughter to you." He continued, "If you're willing, would you become a full-time employee? You're well regarded by other employees in the HR department, and I would like you to help with management in the future." "Yes, thank you," I replied, feeling like I was in a dream. Since then, I've been working even harder as a full-time employee, continuing my smooth relationship with Lucy and regularly updating Mary. Mary, preferring the factory environment, continued working there as a part-timer. A lot happened in a short time, but now I'm very happy. I look forward to living fulfilling days, both in my work and personal life.